Now, there are some first encounters in music that you never forget. And for me, one of those was Beethoven's Last Piano Sonata, played by the great Austrian pianist and composer Artur Schnabel, a recording from 1932 that I first heard when I went for a walk on Hampstead Heath, which was just a bus ride away from where I lived at the time. I was 19 years old. And the impact that that dramatic opening had on me, well, it was almost indescribable. It was a very dark afternoon. Rain clouds were above us, black clouds, in fact. It was heading towards dusk. And the opening of that sonata seemed to mirror the weather perfectly. Now, that was the opening of Beethoven's Last Sonata, played by Artur Schnabel. And the miracle there, in that performance, was not so much in what we just heard as what comes next. Not the rest of the movement, which is extremely tautly argued, not always totally accurate, but extremely impactful in the way it's played, but in the second movement. Now, Schnabel, more than most other pianists, possibly more than any other pianist, could sustain a very, very slow tempo. And the second movement of Beethoven's Last Sonata is an arietta to start with and a set of variations, some of them almost boogie-like in their mood and the way they're written. But it's that opening, which is so broad and so beautifully sustained, which I want to play for you now. The opening of the arietta with variations from Beethoven's Last Piano Sonata. Now, it was this slow music, both in Beethoven and in Schubert, that Schnabel excelled in, not necessarily because he wasn't good in the faster movement. We'll have some music, we'll have some of that in a second. He wasn't the most accurate, he wasn't a virtuoso. A teacher said to him very early on, "You're not a pianist, you're a musician." And I think that was absolutely true, beautifully illustrated by the way he played. It wasn't so much Schnabel was playing Beethoven as Beethoven was playing Schnabel. It was that way round. The music came across as absolutely authentically as it is. But the Hammerklavier Sonata, for example. Now, the outer movements, Schnabel attempts to take at the metronome marks, which are very, very fast. He can't really manage it at that tempo. So a lot of people put the performance out of court because of that. But there's the slow movement. And there, Schnabel achieves an almost operatic level of intensity. You see what I mean? The freedom there, the moving forwards, almost as he's hungry to reach the next bar or the next few bars, the emotional impulsiveness of it, the spontaneity of it. And you'd never believe in a million years that that was recorded in the studio, but it was. And it still comes across as if it was recorded yesterday, not because of the sound, but because of the emotional engagement with the music. Now, I want to play you another piece of slow music, but this is not from a late work. This is from the sonata number 24, which he plays so beautifully. The opening is slow, but again, although this is not late Beethoven, this is one of the most beautiful passages from the late middle period of Beethoven's career. And it's, as I say, it's a slow introduction that leads into the faster body of the music, and the transition, like Furtwängler and a lot of other great musicians of that period. This is where Schnabel's great strengths lay, in his ability to achieve sensitive transitions between different episodes, and I think this is beautifully illustrated by this performance. That was the sonata number 24 by Beethoven, played by Artur Schnabel, part of his complete cycle, which you can get from Warner's at a ridiculously inexpensive price. I remember interviewing Leon Fleischer some years ago, who was a pupil of Artur Schnabel, and he said, you know, people think he was extremely serious because of the profundity of his playing, but if you listen to all his recordings of the sonatas and some of his Schubert, there's a great sense of fun there, and that reflects the man himself. He had a tremendous sense of humour. He was wonderful to be with, a great encouragement that he gave to his pupils, and I think this comes across in the Sonata number 2, his recording of that, the third movement, which has this wonderful sense of fun. Have a listen to this. That was from the second sonata, the third movement. Wonderful sense of fun, as I say. Also a sense of mischief. Now, in the 18th sonata, the finale is a sort of cantering fast movement, and he gets the sort of arguments going in this movement like nobody else does. The central section is well worth sampling, and that's what I'm going to play you next. The finale of the sonata number 18 by Beethoven. Extremely memorable, as are all the 32 sonatas. The Diabelli variations, which Schnabel also plays beautifully, are not in the set. You can get those available separately. But the sonatas are wonderful. You know, you've got Kempf, you've got Arau, you've got Igor Levit more recently, Ronald Brautigam, all manner of pianists who do a brilliant job with the sonatas. But I think you have to hear Schnabel, because Schnabel, as I say, goes to the source. He seems to have a hotline to Beethoven's spirit, and never more so than in that last sonata, whereas towards the end of the work he ferries us away on a sea of trills. The effect is like no one else's performance of this particular work. Wonderful.